Welcome to Wisp Tales. Today we unfold a deeply human journey about learning to love yourself when you feel unworthy. Stay with us as we explore a story that may feel closer to your heart than you expect. There was a quiet morning in the small town of Willow Creek when Emily Harper, a 28-year-old bookstore assistant, stared at her reflection in the shop's front window. The sun was warm, the air was gentle, yet nothing inside her felt the same. For months, she had been walking around with a strange heaviness in her chest, a feeling she couldn't name but could never escape. She felt unworthy of happiness, of love, of praise, even of her own dreams. Emily had always been the type of person who gave everything she had to the people around her. She listened, she helped, she stayed late for others, she sacrificed sleep, comfort, and time just to make someone else's day a little lighter. And somehow, despite all of that, she struggled to believe she deserved even a fraction of the kindness she gave away. Her best friend, Olivia, noticed the change long before Emily admitted it. Olivia had watched Emily shrink her ambitions, avoid mirrors, and apologize for things she never did wrong. Whenever Emily made a mistake, no matter how small, she treated it like a personal failure stamped on her identity. Olivia tried to talk to her, gently asking if something was bothering her, but Emily would just smile in that tired, practiced way and say she was fine. Deep down, she feared that if she expressed how broken she felt, people would walk away. She thought, who would stay with someone like me? But the truth was that Emily had always been battling a quiet war inside her mind. The harsh inner voices came from years of feeling invisible, overlooked, or not good enough. Every careless comment from the past replayed like an echo she couldn't mute. She carried memories she never talked about, moments that chipped away at her confidence, words that stuck to her heart, and disappointments she never healed from. It wasn't that Emily didn't want to love herself, she simply didn't remember how. One afternoon, as she sat alone in the bookstore, sorting through returned items, she found a journal tucked between two novels. It wasn't for sale. It looked old, worn out, and personal. Curiosity tugged at her, so she opened it slowly. Inside were handwritten notes, daily reflections from someone who had been struggling too. Words like, "Today I felt invisible," and "I'm trying to forgive myself for the things I didn't know back then." The entries were raw, emotional, and honest. Emily kept turning pages until she reached one that stopped her breath. You are allowed to love yourself even when you feel unworthy. Healing is not a reward, it's your right.
Her eyes stung. For the first time in a long while, she felt something shift inside her. A quiet whisper, soft but real, telling her she wasn't alone. That maybe her feelings didn't make her weak, that perhaps there was a way back to herself. She closed the journal and held it against her chest, realizing that if another person could write such words in the middle of their darkest moment, maybe she could begin learning too. Maybe she could find a way to love herself even when her mind told her she wasn't enough. And that was the moment her journey truly began, not with confidence or certainty, but with a simple, fragile question. What if I am worth more than I believe? Over the next few days, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the journal she found. She kept it tucked inside her bag, close enough to reach whenever the world felt a little too heavy. Each night when she got home to her small apartment with creaking floors and warm yellow lamps, she would open it again and read a few lines. The entries weren't perfect or poetic. They were messy, vulnerable, and painfully honest, exactly how she felt but never dared to say out loud. The more she read, the more she realized that the person who wrote those words wasn't trying to be strong, they were simply trying to survive. And for the first time, Emily felt like her own brokenness wasn't something to hide, It was something to understand. One evening, Olivia dropped by with takeout, claiming she was too exhausted to eat alone. But Emily knew her friend well enough to understand the truth. Olivia wanted to check on her without making it obvious. They sat on the couch eating noodles straight from the box, talking about work gossip and neighborhood drama. But Olivia kept glancing at Emily with that protective look of hers, the kind that came from years of friendship. Finally, she set her box down and said softly, "Em, you don't have to pretend with me." Emily froze. She wanted to brush it off, to laugh, to say she was just tired, but her throat tightened. Without meaning to, she whispered, "I don't like myself these days." It was the first time she had spoken the words out loud. Olivia leaned closer, her voice gentle but steady. "Feeling unworthy doesn't mean you are unworthy. It just means you're hurting, and you don't have to go through it alone." It felt like a small crack in a thick wall Emily had built around herself. She didn't burst into tears, she didn't break down dramatically, but inside, something softened. She realized that sharing her truth didn't make people run away. Instead, it made them hold her closer. Olivia didn't try to fix her or give advice. She just listened, nodding, letting Emily speak in half sentences and quiet pauses. It was the first time Emily felt seen, not for what she did for others, but for who she was beneath the exhaustion and doubt. Later that night, after Olivia left, Emily sat by the window with the journal resting on her lap. She opened it to a page she hadn't read before. The entry said, "Healing starts the moment you stop hiding from yourself." She read the line again and again until it sank deeper into her heart. She whispered to the empty room, "I'm trying," and maybe that was enough for now. Slowly, she began noticing things she had been ignoring for months. The way she never praised herself but always apologized. The way she dismissed compliments. The way she avoided celebrating her wins. It wasn't that she hated herself. She had just forgotten how to love herself. She realized she needed to relearn everything from the beginning. How to speak kindly to herself. How to rest without guilt. How to let people care for her. How to believe she deserved joy. And somewhere between the journal pages and Olivia's quiet support, Emily began to understand that self-love wasn't a sudden transformation. It was a slow, patient unfolding, a decision she would have to make every single day, even on the days it felt impossible. For the first time in a long while, she felt a small light inside her, a faint warmth, a tiny spark. Not confidence, not certainty, but hope. The following week, Emily began making small changes. Nothing dramatic, just quiet choices that felt almost unfamiliar. She started waking up 10 minutes earlier, not to rush or prepare for anyone else, but simply to sit with a cup of coffee and breathe. At first, it felt strange, like she was doing something selfish. Her mind kept whispering, "You don't deserve calm. You haven't earned this." But she tried to ignore the voice and stayed with herself anyway. Some mornings she managed it, other mornings she couldn't. But she kept trying, and each attempt felt like a tiny rebellion against the part of her that believed she wasn't worth anything. At the bookstore, she began noticing little things she never cared about before, like how customers often smiled at her because she had a warm presence, or how her coworkers relied on her because she was dependable and kind. She wondered how she could see goodness in everyone else but failed to see even a shadow of it in herself.
One evening, while restocking the self-help section, she picked up a book titled Learning to Be Enough. She didn't buy it, but she read the back cover, and a single sentence struck her. You do not have to do extraordinary things to deserve love. You were born deserving it. She held the book for a long moment, letting the words settle. No one had ever told her that. No one had ever taught her that worth wasn't tied to performance or perfection or constant self-sacrifice. She put the book back, but the sentence lingered with her all day, like a small truth waiting patiently to be believed. That night, Emily decided to try something she'd been avoiding for years, writing her own thoughts down. She opened a blank page in the journal she had bought for herself last Christmas but never used. Her hand shook a little, not because she didn't know what to say, but because she was afraid of confronting her feelings on paper. After a long pause, she wrote, I don't know how to love myself, but I want to learn. The words were simple, but they felt like a confession. She continued writing slowly, letting her emotions spill out without judgment. She wrote about her fears, her insecurities, the expectations she tried to meet, the mistakes she couldn't forgive herself for. She wrote until her hand hurt and her eyes grew heavy. When she finally stopped, she realized that she felt a little lighter, like she had opened a window inside her chest and let the stale air escape. For the first time in months, she slept without waking up in the middle of the night with her heart racing. The next day, Emily decided to take a walk through Willow Creek's Riverside Trail. The path was quiet, lined with tall trees and soft patches of sunlight filtering through the branches. As she walked, she felt a strange sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She stopped near the water and watched the river move, effortlessly, freely, without needing permission. It didn't apologize for its path or question its worth. It simply existed, and that alone was enough. She wondered if she could ever feel that way, unapologetically herself, deserving of space and peace. A gentle breeze brushed against her face, and she closed her eyes, letting herself imagine a version of her life where she didn't constantly doubt her value. It was a fragile thought, but beautiful. Standing there by the river, Emily made a quiet promise to herself. Not a dramatic vow, but a soft, steady one. I will try, even when it's hard, even when I don't believe in myself, I will try. And sometimes trying is the very beginning of healing. As the days passed, Emily began to notice that healing wasn't a straight path. Some mornings she woke up feeling lighter, almost proud of the small progress she had made. Other mornings she felt like she was sinking again, like all the confidence she had built slipped away overnight. One Tuesday, she spilled coffee on herself before work, forgot her lunch at home, and snapped at a coworker unintentionally. By noon, she felt overwhelmed and ashamed, convinced she had ruined everything. The old thoughts returned quickly, whispering harsh judgments. You're failing again. You'll never change. You're still the same person who isn't enough. But this time, something inside her stopped the spiral. She remembered Olivia's words, the journal entries, and that moment by the river.
She stepped outside the bookstore for a break, closed her eyes, and took a slow breath. She whispered to herself, "It's just a hard day, not a bad life." It wasn't a perfect fix, but it grounded her. She realized that loving herself didn't mean she would never struggle again. It meant she had to treat herself with the same patience she gave to others. She had to learn that setbacks weren't failures. They were part of being human. That evening, as she sat in her apartment, she felt tempted to criticize herself again. But instead, she picked up her journal and wrote about her day honestly. She wrote about the mistakes, the frustration, and the disappointment. But she also wrote about the moment she chose compassion instead of self-blame. Something remarkable happened when she finished writing. She didn't feel defeated, she felt proud. For the first time, she saw progress not as perfection, but as resilience. Later in the week, Olivia invited her to a small gathering at a local cafe where a group of women met weekly to share personal growth stories. Emily hesitated. She wasn't sure she wanted to sit in a circle and talk about feelings with strangers.
But something nudged her to go. Maybe curiosity, maybe courage. When she arrived, she found herself surrounded by women of different ages, backgrounds, and experiences. One by one, they shared stories of heartbreak, self-doubt, moments they felt unworthy, and the ways they slowly rebuilt themselves. As Emily listened, she realized something powerful. Everyone had moments of feeling not enough. Even the women who looked confident and put together carried stories of internal battles. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like the odd one out. She felt connected, understood, and strangely comforted. When it came time for her to speak, she hesitated, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm learning to love myself, but some days I feel like I don't deserve it." The woman beside her placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and said, "You don't have to deserve love to receive it. You just have to be open to it." The words washed over Emily like warm light. She realized how many years she had waited to be perfect, to be successful, to be flawless, before allowing herself even a drop of kindness. But life didn't work that way. Love didn't work that way. On her walk home that night, she felt a calmness she hadn't known before. She looked up at the sky, the soft glow of streetlights, the faint shimmer of stars, and she felt a quiet gratitude for the world around her, for the people who cared, and for the fact that she was still trying. And somewhere deep inside, she felt a truth she had never allowed herself to believe. She was worthy, not because of what she did, but because of who she was. In the weeks that followed, Emily began to notice changes that felt subtle but meaningful. She wasn't suddenly overflowing with confidence or walking around with perfect self-esteem. No, her transformation was quieter, gentler, like a morning sky slowly brightening before sunrise. She started catching her negative thoughts the moment they appeared. When her mind whispered, "You're not good enough," she paused and responded with something she had learned from therapy podcasts and the support group. That's an old belief, not a truth. At first it felt awkward, almost forced, but the more she practiced it, the more her mind softened. It was as if she had finally begun speaking a language she was never taught, one of kindness toward herself.
At work, she noticed how people naturally gravitated toward her, not because she was trying to impress anyone, but because she had begun treating herself better. It showed in the small ways, the way she stood a little straighter, the way she no longer apologized excessively, the way she allowed herself to say no when she truly needed rest. One afternoon, her manager pulled her aside and said, "Emily, you seem lighter lately, happier." And for the first time, she didn't dismiss the compliment. She let it in. It warmed her in a way she couldn't explain. Her evenings changed too. Instead of scrolling through social media, comparing her life to polished photos of people she didn't even know, she spent time reading, journaling, walking by the river, or calling Olivia. She allowed herself moments of joy without feeling guilty for them. Sometimes she baked cookies just because she felt like it. Sometimes she lit candles, played soft music, and allowed herself to breathe without pressure. She began learning that joy didn't have to be earned. It could simply exist. One Saturday morning, she returned to the Riverside Trail, the place where she'd first made the quiet promise to try. As she walked along the water, she thought about everything she had gone through, the exhaustion, the loneliness, the weight of feeling unworthy. She remembered nights she cried silently into her pillow, mornings she felt like she couldn't face herself, moments she looked in the mirror and saw nothing but flaws. But now, she felt something else, something new, something healing. She felt proud of surviving what she once thought would break her, proud of trying when it felt impossible, proud of choosing herself even in small ways. She sat on the same large rock by the river and watched the water pass by. She took out her journal and wrote, "I'm not fully healed, and maybe I won't be for a while, but I'm growing, I'm learning, and I'm beginning to love the person I'm becoming." She looked at her handwriting, noticing how steady it was, how confident it felt. She realized she wasn't the same woman who first found that mysterious journal in the bookstore. She was softer, yet stronger, still vulnerable, but no longer fragile. And as the sunlight shimmered across the surface of the river, she felt a calm truth wash over her. She no longer needed anyone to prove her worth. She didn't need perfect days or flawless moments to feel valuable. She didn't need validation to feel lovable, because she was finally learning to give herself the love she had been longing for all along. For the first time in her life, she whispered words she once thought she'd never say. "I deserve love, especially my own." As spring unfolded in Willow Creek, Emily realized just how far she had come on her journey of self-love. Her life wasn't suddenly perfect, and she didn't walk around with constant confidence, but something was undeniably different now.
She had learned to see herself with gentler eyes. She no longer measured her worth by her productivity or compared her life to others. She began showing up for herself the same way she always showed up for the people she cared about. One afternoon, as she was organizing a new display at the bookstore, an elderly woman with silver hair approached her. "You always look so peaceful when you're here," the woman said softly. Emily blinked in surprise. Peaceful wasn't a word she had ever imagined someone would use to describe her. "Thank you," she replied with a shy smile. And as the woman walked away, Emily realized that she wasn't pretending anymore. The calmness she carried wasn't a mask, it was real. She had grown into it slow enough to not even notice when it became part of her. That evening, Olivia invited her over for dinner. As they sat at the kitchen table, sharing stories and laughing, Emily suddenly remembered the version of herself from months before, the girl who felt invisible, unworthy, and unsure.
She thought about how she used to shrink from compliments, how she used to apologize for existing, how she used to hide her feelings behind forced smiles. And now, here she was, open, present, breathing easier. Olivia noticed her quiet moment and asked gently, "What are you thinking about?" Emily smiled. "How different I feel. How whole." Olivia leaned back in her chair with a warm expression. "You did that," she said. "You chose yourself, even when you didn't believe you were worth choosing." The words touched her deeply. She realized how true they were. No one had rescued her. No magical moment had suddenly healed her. It was her own resilience, her courage, her small daily steps. She began loving herself the moment she stopped waiting for someone else to do it for her. Later that night, Emily returned to her apartment, lit a small lamp, and sat with her journal one last time. She flipped to a fresh page and wrote, "I am worthy of love, even on my darkest days, and I will never forget that again." As she closed the journal, she felt a quiet pride she had never known. She had grown from a place of deep self-doubt into someone who could look in the mirror and see value, softness, and strength. She had learned that loving yourself wasn't a destination, it was a continuous act, a lifelong relationship with your own heart.
Standing at the window, watching the city lights shimmer across the night sky, she felt gratitude for the people who helped her, for the river that held her secrets, for the journal that sparked her healing, and for the journey that led her back home to herself. She whispered a final promise. No matter how hard life gets, I will not abandon myself again. And in that quiet, peaceful moment, Emily understood something she wished she had known years ago. Even when you feel unworthy, you are still deserving of love, joy, and kindness, especially from yourself. Thank you for watching Whisped Tales. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of your own strength, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Next time, we'll return with another inspiring story that you'll love just as much. Until then, take care of yourself. You deserve it.